Okay, everyone, so this is the second video lecture on Chapter 1 of Sociology, the Sociological Perspective. In the previous lecture, I was making reference to the classic phrase about personal troubles and social issues, and I couldn't remember who it was. Well, here it is. It's C. Wright Mills. He is actually a contemporary, in other words, like I think he died in the 70s or the 80s, a sociological thinker. And he says you can never truly understand an individual unless you also understand the society, historical time period in which they live, their personal troubles, and their social issues. And so that's really what sociology is about, is understanding that what we are experiencing on a personal level is not. I would argue, and I think sociologists in general would argue, that our culture tells us that we should hold ourselves more responsible for our situation, and it underestimates or it under attributes. It doesn't hold our society as responsible for our situation, and what sociology. And I think this is why sociology is appealing to some people, because if they have had personal struggles, to recognize that, wait, there are other things that are beyond my control happening that have made it difficult for me. But our culture, especially in the West, right? In other cultures, there's more. In Europe, for instance, sociology really is born in Europe. But in our culture, we're told that you are responsible instead of larger social forces. So my husband sometimes likes to say that sociology is the blame everybody else discipline, where you can shift explanation. Okay, I'm going to move on. So this slide is about another important concept called social location. And I'm going to draw you something. That's why I'm distracted here. So there's another little discussion activity where I ask you to think about social location. Social location is a really important sociological concept. And what it refers to, or what it suggests, is that society is like a triangle, right? You have a handful, a very small group of very wealthy, very powerful people at the top. And then the rest of us are distributed somewhere else in the triangle. There's way more people down here at the bottom of the social triangle than there are at the top. This is actually not reliable. What we really have is a lot more people down here, and these people will be way up here. But we all sit somewhere in the social structure. We all sit somewhere. We're all one of these little dots somewhere in here, and this is what we refer to as our social location, where you are situated relative to the rest of society. Are you at the top, right? Do you have a lot of resources, or are you at the bottom? There's lots of things that predict our social location, but for our purposes, I'm going to emphasize these three right here. These are the big three, and we're going to talk a lot about all of these three. And in the discussion, these are the three I want you to think about: are your race, class, and gender. The significance of social location is what we call your life chances. How easy or difficult it will be for a person to access social resources. So here's a little image I found that kind of illustrates it. Is if you think of society as being, and all of the opportunities in society as being like this hole in the wall here, right? And you want to get through that hole in the wall, but your shape, the characteristics that make up your identity, your race. Are you white? Are you white, or are you a person of color in our culture? Your class, do you have resources, or do you have money, or do you not have money? Your gender, are you male or female, or something besides male and female? All of these things make up your social location. And your shape, so what you have here is you have the circle, who obviously easily got through this circle hole in the wall, telling the rest of the shapes, just be yourself. Well, the triangle can't get through the circle. The square can't get through the circle, because their shape, or their location, their characteristics, they can't access those social resources, right? And the ability to get through this hole is what sociologists refer to as your life chances. Do you have a chance to get through those roles? If you are born poor, if you are born as a poor yellow triangle, right? What are the odds that you're going to be able to access the hole to Harvard University? Well, under some conditions, you might be able to, but the general pattern, remember we're about patterns, not about individual, the general pattern would predict you're not going to get through that wall, right? You're not going to be able to access that. So again, we've got some, but there may be certain societal variables, like if you're born in a time of rampant racism, right? Social forces that might make it easier for you to get to those. You've got some historical examples about, I guess I could just use, Barack Obama as an example. There were times when he wouldn't have been able to have voted for himself. Or you could use the example of a same-sex couple who wants to get through that hole and marry. But prior to, I should know that year off the top of my head, and I don't, certain times in American history, that was against the law. They didn't have the life chance to access that social resource. And these are historical changes. So are the the opportunities and the barriers of our particular shape, our particular social location, are maybe changed because of social forces. I sometimes I use the example of during the a couple of there's all these thoughts going on. Say during the Great Depression, when people woke up the next day and their job was gone, they didn't wake up and decide, I don't want to go to work anymore. But the society changed, the history changed, and those larger social forces had implications for them on an individual level. Another way that we can talk about this idea of larger social forces enabling us to get through the hole in the wall, sometimes is referred to as structure and agency. So structure is a kind of a generic term. It's kind of a catch-all term for all the social forces, right? Structure can include literally the way a room is situated, the way a building is built. Is there an escalator? Are there elevators as opposed to steps? It could be the structure of where jobs are. Are they within a geographical distance that I could drive to? Or they could be legal structures like laws. Agency refers to my ability to act, right? So agent is something that cleans, or like you have a cleaning agent, or you have an agent that will help you find a modeling gig or a place to play your band, right? You have a talent agent. Structure and agency interact with each other. So what this means is, and you can kind of see it over here, right? Sorry, you can't see where I'm pointing. Over here, you see this maze, and the way all these mazes would be an example of structure. And the mouse or whatever it is, he's the actor. The mouse is the actor. And the actor has agency to move through the structure. So again, we're told, right, in our culture that we are responsible for ourselves. And if we want to accomplish something, then we just need to go for it and use our personal agency. What sociologists argue is it's not that simple, that our ability to move through the social structure, right, our ability to attain the goals at the other end of the maze, to get through that hole in the wall, is limited, right? So our agency is limited by the social forces, by the structure. And so not only are the forces, is the social structure determining how I can act my social agency through the social structure, but the nature of my shape, the nature of my of my game piece. So I use a couple more. Like another metaphor is I like to use the example of a chessboard. If you play chess, you know that all the different that the pieces have different ways that they can move around the board, right? You have the rook who can go straight forward all the way across. Yeah, the rook. You have the knight who 1, 2, 3, 1. You have the queen. She can do whatever she wants. You have the king, and he can only move one piece. That's his structure, right? His structure is it's the king piece, it's the queen, it's the rook, it's the knight, right? And that their agency, their ability to move about the board, right, is determined by the structure, the rules of the game, and the board. You can take that piece off the board and it has no agency anymore, right? And so we are a little bit like that too. What our piece is, like I'm a white 50-year-old female, right? That's my predicts or influences, let me use that word, influences my ability to move about in society, right? And depending upon how my social structure regards a middle-aged white woman, that will predict my ability to access resources or accomplish things. Okay, I'm going to stop here because we're slightly at 11 minutes, and I'll come back